Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I know it's the mascot. I'm Chris Coughlin, and I have with me tonight George McMillan from HF Lens. We're here to give you an update on the renovation project. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you. As far as the civil and site work, Sanford's working on the forebay, the rain garden, design of the new catch basins, and the associated stormwater piping. He'll coordinate with PennDOT as they know more. At this time, they don't have any details for him. And then he intends to submit the stormwater management plan in November. Architecturally, we're working on the construction documents with the anticipated bid date of January, February of 2021. The budget still appears to be appropriate. We're going to be watching several large projects. They're going to be bid here in the next couple of months to see where those come in, to see what those numbers are. We're laying out rooms for furniture and equipment. We're reviewing those soon with the administration and department heads and faculty. Reviewing materials that are to be specified and potential alternates such as door hardware, roofing, and windows. Providing information to consultants to proceed with their work, in particular windows, doors, toilet room layouts, and building sections. Coordinating new infrastructure with George for new and existing conditions. We met in regard to the security and Act 44 of 2018. We're to review the hardware in another week. Departmental reviews begin next week with the kitchen consultant, Ken Kissler. We intend to submit drawings and specs for a building permit in November, and we plan to begin construction in April of 2021 and complete by 2022 of July. As far as structural, design loads and all those assumptions for the site, occupancy, and configuration of the structural system have been identified. Footers are designed, structural steel frame is designed, and work on details has begun. As far as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, HF Lens and George and his team have been working on the project since our last meeting and coordinating it with Dell. George has an updated set of design development drawings for us here tonight, as well as specs. And he'll leave them with you today. He'll also discuss the HVAC options reviewed and a recommendation and provide an update on mechanical, electrical, plumbing design. George, with that.
Jeff, are there any board members on Zoom or anything?
There is nobody remotely on Zoom other than Miss Scalise, who is the special ed coordinator here. And we have 3 watching on YouTube.
Okay.
Let me know when you want your presentation.
Yeah, if you could do that.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks, everyone. I just want to give you an update on the mechanical and electrical design. When we left the last meeting, we had a couple of things that we wanted to accomplish for this meeting. One, as Chris mentioned, get the updated drawings to match with the architectural plans, start working on and verifying existing conditions and getting those documented. We have done that. As Chris mentioned, I did bring an updated set of drawings and specifications for everyone. I also brought it electronically, so Jeff has a copy of it. The second thing that we wanted to accomplish was talking about the HVAC system. The way we left it at the last meeting, we had a couple of tasks on our end to complete and provide some additional information. And just as a refresher for everyone, the 2 options that we were looking at, the first option being the rooftop units, gas fired with DX cooling, serving VAV boxes that would serve the individual zones throughout. The VAV boxes would have hot water reheat coils, and we would have small boilers, hot water boilers to accommodate. The second option that we were looking at, and which is the option that we've been proposing, for interior air handling units with hot and chilled water coils, a centralized boiler plant to provide heating, and a centralized chiller plant to provide cooling. We talked through some of the aspects of the first option. With rooftop units, some of the things that we mentioned, the equipment would require additional structural support. It may require a new natural gas service to the building. And roof mounted equipment presents some challenges, especially in this weather, this climate, because of the snow and other things that happen. The option that we're proposing, the interior air handling units, one of the main reasons that we were proposing or recommending that option is because of the existing mechanical space that you have within the facility. Let me just say with either option, both options can be done for this facility, are very energy efficient solutions. Each have their positive and negative things with the systems. However, anytime we have the opportunity to recommend equipment goes inside the building, we try to do so. 90% of our projects we do as renovation projects. Probably a majority of those we deal with rooftop equipment because simply facilities can't give up programming space. They can't build mechanical rooms. They can't build mezzanines. They don't want to incur that cost. You're very fortunate in this facility to already have those existing that can be reused, and we don't have to build new structure or additions or claim programming space to accommodate the equipment. Excuse me. So in talking with Dell, the existing mezzanines work very well in this facility. I don't believe you have any issues with accessing them, replacing, maintaining equipment, things like that. We're able to provide the proper zoning with the system that we're talking about. I know there's areas throughout the building that some have heating only, some don't have cooling. There are issues with teaching spaces and whatnot. So we're able to resolve that issue for you. Looking at the central boiler plant, what we are proposing with that solution is 4 boilers, be high efficiency hot water boilers. You would have roughly 25% spare capacity. So if you lost one boiler, you could still, on the coldest day of the year, still maintain operation, replace the boiler, and not have any issues. On the cooling plant side, we were looking at 2 chillers exterior to the building on grade level. So we would not have to endure any cost associated with additional structural framing up on the roof. Keep the chillers at grade level so that they're easier to maintain. And we were looking at 30% spare capacity in those. So the chillers are sized for the warmest day out of the year, which usually falls in July or August timeframe. Typically, you may only be running on 1 chiller, so you have that other chiller almost for full redundancy. With both of those systems, we're proposing glycol in the systems to prevent freezing. You certainly don't want to have hot water, chilled water coils in the air handling units and have them freeze because something fails open, one of your outside air dampers, whatnot, and cause any freezing issues. Some of the other things I talked about the glycol, but with interior air handling units, another advantage, we can look at putting some of them on emergency power because we're only dealing with, a fan motor. We would already be looking at the hot water plant and hot water pumps on emergency power. That way, if you have an extended outage, you can circulate water through the building. If we get several air handling units on the emergency generator, could serve core areas, could keep the building up and running for several days. Maybe not at optimum temperatures, but certainly enough to keep it from freezing. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was looking at the life cycle cost analysis, which I believe everybody received a copy of. I'm jumping around a lot too, Jeff.
Just keep the finger if you need to change anything.
One moment to hand those out. Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of hard, like I said, we got them all on computers and then we hear it at the meeting and see that with the screen. everybody had their laptop with them, and that's all we did.
So what we did in the analysis that Chris is handing out, we took just a sample of a rooftop unit versus an air handling unit. We used a 25-ton unit just for comparison between the two. As you can see, the 25-ton rooftop unit has a life expectancy of about 15 years. Although most of you would agree, you probably get around 20 years out of them before you start having any major issues. And the indoor air handling units have a life expectancy of about 20 years, according to the literature. However, we've seen interior air handling units go for 30+ years. Being that they're very simple units, they're inside the building, they're protected. As long as they're maintained, there's not a whole lot to go wrong with them. But for this analysis, we wanted to stay with what the industry recommendations were. So just going down through, a lot of the components of both systems are the same. Boilers, the difference with the rooftop units is we would not have a chiller. We still have VAV boxes, ductwork, some piping, gas piping. And if you look down at the bottom, total cost over 15 years, looking at both systems, you're looking at a significantly less, I'll say, with the air handling units. And again, one of the main reasons for this is on the initial installation cost. With the rooftop units, you have to include the structure, other things that you have to modify, where with the interior air handling units, you don't, because that structure is already in place. And just comparing total cost over 20 years, we're still at a lower cost with the indoor air handling units. Again, once you get to 20 years and 20-year plus, you're going to be looking at replacement of the rooftop units in kind, where you could still go along and utilize the air handling units that you would have, because they're very simple pieces of equipment. Again, I know there's probably a question from a lot of people about, how can that be with the interior units? And it really comes down to the existing facility and how it's already arranged now, with the structure, with the mechanical rooms in place, everything available to you to reuse that you don't have the initial cost. If we were looking at rooftop units, I did go through the structural drawings and look at what would be needed to do that. One of two things would need to happen. One, either we'd have to put some additional structure below the roof at all of the various locations, or we would have to try to do something above the roof. If we try to do something above the roof, that gets very messy. On top of the rooftop units, we'd end up with exterior ductwork. Anytime you have exterior ductwork or penetrations, it's more prone to leak, have issues to deal with. Not that there's anything wrong, not that it's not done every day, but you have the opportunity with this project to eliminate a lot of those issues that could happen in the future. The last item, I believe, did you hand this out? What I did was took one of the new floor plans, or the proposed floor plans, and I just wanted to give everybody an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about existing mechanical space, existing structure, the areas that can possibly be reused as part of this project. And I took out some information from the existing drawings, just a section to be able to give you an idea of what an air handling unit may look like in one of those spaces. We're certainly not trying to cram any piece of equipment into a small space that's not maintainable, not accessible. That space already exists. And fortunately, in this building, you have a lot of space to work with. So I've highlighted them in yellow, and as Chris passes them out, we have it up on the screen as well. But going down both of the long corridors, there's a fairly substantial mezzanine area that currently houses the air handling units within the building. So we have a lot of space to work with there. We also have a fairly large, up in the upper right-hand corner of the plan, we have a fairly large mezzanine area over top of the existing kitchen area to work with. Then we have some smaller areas that we were talking about. We have some additional steel. They're a little bit tighter to work with. We may have to look at some alternative areas around where the office is now, but I'm confident that we can come up with a solution that'll work and work for everyone. So that was the main reason to provide this plan, just to give you an idea. We've been talking about the mechanical spaces, the structure. This is what you would not have to rebuild if you look at the interior air handling unit option. Again, if we go with rooftop units, there's certainly nothing wrong with that approach. We do it all the time. It's just going to mean additional cost associated with the structure that's going to be necessary.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
This design is intended to have some more space added to it in terms of a kitchen and cafeteria. Is the plan in that new space to build a mezzanine?
No, sir. We believe that we can reuse the existing mezzanine.
No. We're going to repurpose where you have that mezzanine in the upper right, where it's current kitchen.
Oh, yes.
That's going to have to be repurposed away from a kitchen area. And because of some other, I don't know who's working on what pieces, but we're going to have to build a cafeteria and essentially the center lower piece right there.
Correct.
So, that was my question. For that new construction, is there going to have to be a mezzanine built?
No, sir. We believe we can utilize either this space or this space here
Oh, I see. Okay.
to put the air handling units on and then serve out through ductwork. It's not our intent to build any new mezzanine spaces.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I see, basically this seems like a no-brainer. There's no reason to go with the 15-year unit versus 20-year unit based on time, also on money. My one question is, what would be a reason to choose the rooftop unit versus the indoor and the air handling unit? Is it a design thing? Would it be for the building? Is there any good reason that we would choose the rooftop unit versus the indoor unit?
There are some positive aspects to rooftop units. The one that comes to mind, if you lose your boiler plant, say you lost all 4 boilers, you would be able to run a rooftop unit at a higher temperature to maintain your space temperature. So you would have that ability. But we compensate that in the design of the air handling units with providing redundancy in the boiler plants. So, you know, we kind of balance it out that way. That way you're not dependent on one piece of equipment.
I guess my question came down to, why are we looking at basically apples and oranges? That they really seem to have so much different that I don't know what the point is that we even looked at the rooftop unit.
Oh, I can address that.
Thank you.
When we were in the JOC meeting last time, there was a conversation when we looked at the proposed design. There was a conversation that said, were there other options for other technologies? And it seemed to me that we looked at 2 or 3 different options, and the JOC came back and said, well, why don't you come up with something that's a little bit more tangible in terms of a feasible comparison of 2 types of technologies? That's why we got the 2-column format with that technology. So we looked at 3 or 4, it might have even been a 5th different type of technology that could have been used. We looked at their recommendation, and the conversation was that we can't really, it's not presented in a way that we can make some sort of comparison. Let's throw out the ones that are obviously too far off and look at the 2 that are the closest.
I mean, I remember Chris talking about the geothermal and some other things, but these just seem so vastly different.
The geothermal, that's a glad to wrap it up, because that would be something I consider apples and oranges. These 2 really aren't, but to answer your original question of what's the benefit of the rooftops here, to me, there aren't any. As George mentioned, with the structure we have to do and the structure we have to build under all those, it's going to be a nightmare. I mean, it can be done, but the obvious solution to us is the air handlers.
Because the cost for limitations alone, to me, I mean, I wouldn't even consider the rooftop unit for $200,000 over the course of 20 years.
Nor would we, but we wanted to give you that. Yeah, I would have been negligent if we had came in here with geothermal and it cost 3 times as much. So,
Correct.
New technology, like I said, the system that we're inside system could incorporate all sorts of new technology. You could do geothermal, you could do solar heating, and that could fit right into the boiler system. That could go right directly into the boiler system to enhance it, couldn't it? If, let's say, technology down the road, they figure out,
Sure.
and all you do is take the hot water and go in this boiler or geothermal cold water and go back to the thing and don't go through the chiller and go through different lines. But and on our school district, we actually have both sides. One of the schools has the air handling system, and we got brand new, and our new school did all that. We have new chillers in it, new boilers in it, because we went from non-air conditioning to air conditioning. They said this was the most efficient way of going it, piping the waters into the air handlers and doing it versus trying to figure out the ductwork, because you can just run the pipes up to the several air handlers to get access from the outside. Every room has their own air handler and a mixer, and they can get the outside correct extra air too, because school districts need that, so that everyone can get the outside air, heating, cooling. Every room's individually controlled, and every window is different heating. That's why we went with that chiller system. And our Out Valley School, we have air handlers and we're replacing them right now. Their life expectancy it lasts, they last long enough, but they all need replaced. And another thing, this school is over 50 years old. And, you know, how does the system work? How much has got replaced since 50 years?
Well, quite a bit of piping, a whole bunch of different coils on the individual units in the classrooms. We've had to replace coils, we've had to repair coils. And then, of course, you know, there's trying to find the parts for the air handlers that are.
Our boiler just got replaced, right?
The boilers did not. It was.
We looked at them like that one.
We took the stack down, and when we did that, we had to put an intervec system in for an exhaust because it's no longer gravity fed, because we no longer have a stack. So that's the money we spent was for the exhausting the existing boiler.
So basically, they have an expectancy of 25 years. We already doubled that here.
Yeah. So
that's I'm 100% good with the chiller system, but on the chiller system, are you gonna have it's gonna be all outside them somewhere? I was trying to see where it's gonna be on the floor plan.
our current chiller system is outside, inside the fenced area next to the courtyard over here, but on the culinary side.
Yeah.
Down on this side of the building.
Okay.
It currently sits on the ground outside.
Okay. Would access that same chilling area? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I was trying to see it on the floor plan. That's what I was trying to look at it. Got a boiler room, but
I apologize.
okay.
How does that work for air exchange? Is that better for air exchange? You know, because the city of Erie is working with problems that they can't even have kids in school because the air exchange is bad.
Right.
So would this improve the air exchange?
Oh, absolutely. We have to include the necessary outside air.
We have mixing boxes, correct? Every spot will have a mixing box and they'll get air
Correct.
outside, air inside the mix. Every room will have a whole mixing box, so that we access it.
So it won't be recirculating old air, it'll be fresh all the time.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from? Is that coming, the old units, I guess, were down on the ground level, and the new ones, some of them are coming from higher up in
I
the.
think we're getting a little confused. The chillers and the boilers are on ground level.
Right.
The air handling units are up in the mezzanine and they have stacks that go up on them in the roof. So the air comes from on the top
Correct.
off the roof, down into the air handlers. So it comes from outside down into the air handlers. And then those air handlers through ductwork take that in and out of the classroom.
So in the classroom, they don't have, like in a lot of our older schools,
They don't have to use
No.
ventilators.
everything's coming through ductwork. So the fresh air is coming from wherever.
From the roof, yeah, mainly from the roof area.
Okay.
I guess one of the other big questions is really Dell this is gonna be your baby, you're gonna live with this, you're gonna be the one to service this.
Correct, 30
So,
years.
For the next 30 years.
Thank you, I feel 30 sometimes.
So I mean, I would believe your input on what you think would be the best one that for
Right,
your
and last
was-
month when we were talking, I'm in agreement with you. I think the centralized plant is better for me. One of the reasons is because of the life cycle. And I was teasing John a little bit earlier. I said it took 16 years to get to this point. I said, so when we get this approved, I should start immediately on the next one.
That's right.
So, so, but anyways, yeah, because of the life cycle of the equipment and the longevity of it, as well as if you put all those individual rooftop units on there, every one of them is an individual unit then.
Right.
And they all have filters, they all have bells, they all have to be greased and all that kind of stuff. We have one maintenance man in this building
Yeah.
besides me
Yeah.
during the day and one in the evening. And there are two different levels. I have one HVAC guy, he does all of the all the way up to 480 electric power. He does all the HVAC, he does the refrigeration for the kitchen, he does all that. So with a building this size, he's busy routinely with the work orders and doing his routine maintenance more than he can get done in a day. So I think if we added all of those rooftop units, we probably almost have to hire another maintenance man.
And then if you think about it, in 20 years, when this starts to need parts or needs a little attention, TLC, I.
Replace the whole thing.
Well, but somebody's, I mean, it seems like this would be easier to service.
Right, you have individual air handling units that if something happened to an individual air handling unit, that can be replaced or repaired or whatever. The only thing the centralized thing does is your hydronic pipe, hot water piping, then is heated in one place. But it circulates throughout the building and it goes through a coil in every one of those air handling units. So, I mean, they're different but very similar in the way they operate. You're still getting outside air, you're still getting your hot water circulating. And the only difference between that unit and the centralized chiller plant is you'd be circulating chilled water with glycol versus DX cooling, which is with Freon. So if you want to talk about being green, circulating water is much better than using refrigerant.
I like it.
You got a question?
I'm good.
Sorry.
So you're using the existing mezzanine area to store things, all that, but all piping, all that is all new.
That's all new, correct.
But all of the protrusions, all the holes in the walls are already there, and so that's another savings for sure.
You're
Sure.
positive on the rooftop unit, am I wrong in thinking that if all your boilers go down, which isn't very likely, that's a problem, your rooftop would be nicer, but if one of those rooftop units go down, your whole building isn't down, but you've got an area that's down.
Correct. That's
There's no
correct.
redundancy there. It's
Correct.
redundant.
And the other downfall of the rooftop units, it's much more difficult to incorporate them onto emergency power. Not that it can't be done, but that grows the size of the generator. So with the air handling units, we're basically picking up a fan. With rooftop units, you got to pick up the whole thing. So now you went from this size generator to something that's huge that you may not really need.
George, a couple questions.
Yes,
You
sir.
mentioned gas service may be inadequate for the units. I mean, you still have to power other unit, the boilers,
Mhm.
right? Isn't
Correct.
there isn't that the same,
No.
or the same gas usage, or is it more?
No, it's actually more with the rooftop units, because what happens on the sizing of the rooftop units, the sizing is usually dictated by the cooling load. And then you get a packaged rooftop unit and they have a certain heating range, and it's usually much larger than what you actually need for the building, but you have to accommodate it because of the pressure and everything. So we've done projects where we've had to run 8-inch lines across the roof of the building to accommodate all of the rooftop units.
Do we know what we have here now, or
Not off the
do
top
you
of
know
my
that we
head.
do or don't, or is that would have to be figured out?
That would have to be figured out, but my past experience on projects, to be honest, we've had to increase the gas service on just about every one we've done with rooftop units, unless they had rooftop units.
You mentioned work on the rooftops to support these units. Is that cost included in your estimate?
The structural?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, so that's in there.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I have, and I talked briefly about it, is the complexity of the system. You know, you got cooling water all through the plant, and you got to, control it to each of the classrooms and all that. And I don't know, I think it's a complex type situation. And I don't know how that will go over time.
Well, I think with either of the options, you're still going to have individual controls at the classrooms. So that doesn't really change. With the rooftop units, you would still have a boiler system for your hot water reheat. So you would still have the pumps and everything associated with that. So the only additional component that you're really adding is the chilled water system, where you would have a couple of pumps, to circulate the water through, and obviously your chillers. So it's not as different as you might think with the rooftops versus the chillers. There's a little bit more complexity to it, but you're still going to have either option. You're going to have a VAV box for each classroom with a controller with an individual thermostat to give you the zoning. So all of those pieces and parts are still there with either.
And some bigger pumps.
The pumps will get a little larger running glycol through them. There's no doubt, but what is nice is that the pumps will have VFDs, so they'll only be running at whatever speed they need to satisfy the system, rather than just turning on a 15 or 20 horsepower pump and wasting energy.
Right, isn't that what we're running now, basically, Bill? Are we running mixer boxes now?
Well, kind of, air handling units have coils in them and they're controlled with valves. And then, of course, when the air comes across, it either goes across the chill coil or heat coil.
Well, that's basically what we're running now.
Yes.
So it's basically the same thing we have now, just newer.
Hopefully newer.
Well, you said like all different pumps, variable speed motors, digital controls.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be brand new. I'm sure it'll work perfect.
Well, I don't know if it will work perfect, but it can work better. We bought a brand new school, we already have broke down 2 years down, and something broke down and it wasn't supposed to break down for 10 years.
Well, for this kind of money, it better work perfect at least.
Well, ours just cost more than that, we still break down.
Yeah.
Brand new chillers, everything like that.
Are the parts warranty? Sorry,
That's okay.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Go ahead.
Not for 20 years.
How long?
Usually a standard warranty on a project is 1 year.
Yeah.
For most of the pieces and parts. There are extended warranties called out for 5 years for compressors and some specialty items. But that's something we can certainly talk about as we get closer to finishing up the documents. If there's anything that you would like to add or include in the specifications for extended warranties or maintenance packages or whatever, is something that we can visit.
That could also be an alternate.
I see at your maintenance cost per year, that the chilled system is roughly $8,000 more a year you're predicting to maintain. What is the biggest reason for that extra $8,000?
The biggest reason is probably the chillers themselves.
Is that physical parts or man hours?
More on man hours. I don't anticipate, unless you have a compressor or something go bad on a chiller, there's not a lot of parts and pieces that you're going to replace. So it's more just, general maintenance, cleaning, flushing the system, maintaining the glycol associated with it, making sure that the percentages are correct in the solution and whatnot.
So that would lead back to what you had mentioned earlier. If we have, it sounds like another half a manpower to address that. Or is that something we're gonna have to address in the future once it's installed?
Well, and again, keep in mind, something like this, putting together these cost analysis is very difficult to do. We base it on industry standards, but when they compile the industry standards, they're looking at large plants as well as smaller plants. The plant that we're talking about for this facility is fairly small.
Okay.
It's also, we're looking at packaged chillers. So everything is contained in one unit with the controls, with the compressors, condensers, everything is right there.
So probably 6 months under his belt, he's gonna know
Correct.
where we stand as far as maintenance.
Correct. And to be honest, usually If a compressor goes bad, that's about what you see with the system, other than dealing with the glycol.
Okay.
And you're gonna sub that out and bring a contractor to do that anyways,
We do on some things, we have one maintenance guy. You can't
I'm
even-
talking just your PMs and like
Right.
you had mentioned and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
PM wouldn't, isn't gonna be much different than what our system is now.
Right.
Because it's basically that system.
Is that basically what we pay right now for maintenance on our unit?
Well, we have, basically, if our unit isn't running to optimum performance and we have contractors coming in to work on it as well as my staff working on it, we probably are doing ballpark of a repair once every, a repair other than maintenance, like once every, 2 months or something like that during the running season. And when the chiller system has gone down in the past, we're right now on the current chiller system, we have 1 compressor out of 4 that works. So, we were without any, AC for about a month, and Dr. Walker had approved an emergency expenditure to get Spader in here to replace a compressor, which took weeks to order, to get anything that would even work with it.
So at this point in time, $34,000 would be less than what we spent right now.
Yeah, let me put a little light into the shadows on that. When I got here, the strategy for many years had been, as things broke and went offline, as you hear us talk about redundancy, the idea was, we'll fix it in a renovation. But the renovation turned out to be still not done 16 years later.
Yeah,
So when one thing goes out now, the building's down.
Right.
And so that's kind of an occasion where we had something go down, we had a freeze up, and then you have a catastrophic failure.
right.
So Dell is trying to figure out how to do TLC on a piece of equipment that was originally scheduled to be 15 to 20 years, but we're into it for about 50 years.
Yeah.
That's why I couldn't begin.
Yeah, so even with these justifications in here, now one thing to keep in mind about the scale is that we're gonna add roughly just under 20% of the footprint of the building here. So there's gonna be a little bit bigger units and so forth, but you're not gonna have to go in and start flushing systems and that kind of thing as preventive maintenance for some period of time.
Is it fair to say with a new system, higher efficiencies, modern technology and everything, then is it possible that his PM maintenance could actually go down?
Well, the reactive maintenance would go down. The PM maintenance is gonna have the same manufacturer's checks and services as it does now, but we do a lot of reactive maintenance. Hurry up and run it. This room doesn't have the heat, it's too hot, too cold.
Yeah.
And so he has to drop what he's doing and run and go do that.
It's probably gonna be a big learning curve.
Yeah, he's out on the roof and, whatever weather, that kind of stuff, trying to get things running. And that's one of the reasons why we say, if you have a failure during a class time, you don't tell the teacher or students to suck it up. It just doesn't work that way. The students aren't gonna learn if they're distracted with the temperature, things like that. There's a lot stake. So, that's the reactive maintenance is the bad thing.
Should we assume that, this might sound like a silly question, but I just want to put it out there. Should we assume then that this new air handler will actually save our school money over the?
Oh, for efficiency and less energy use and for several other reasons, less reactive maintenance. We're still gonna say maintenance man here,
Right,
but I won't be calling contractors.
that's what I'm saying.
So no contractors, and we're gonna have saved some money.
And higher efficiency.
Right.
Yeah, higher efficiency.
I think they're predicting, if I'm reading that right, energy use will be about $8,000 a year difference, right, between the two systems.
Yeah, that only says the two systems. I was.
I would have to
spent now.
assume it's probably, yeah,
I mean,
double
I would
compared to
assume,
an
yeah,
older
exactly.
system.
Right. Yeah, the energy efficiency, you're going to see a significant difference between the HVAC, the lighting upgrades, and all the other pieces and parts that go with it. There'll be a significant difference.
I think one of the bigger issues too is the technology. I know setting these things up these days is the chore. They got to bring people in from Pittsburgh or wherever to bring them in and follow up with how to use it.
Well, that's even with the current systems. I'm using Metasys out of Johnson Controls now, and if something doesn't work right or whatever, I just had a failure on one of the nodules in that old controller that's in the boiler room. And I had to get Johnson Controls in here, and they had a special order of part to get things up and running again, so that I could get, a certain part of the system up and running again. And so with a system this age and that kind of thing, I mean, Erie's a small town. We're lucky that we're within 2 hours of 3 major cities. So we can get support if we need to, but they do have local offices, and if it's something routine, there's people that live in this area that work for those companies that will come here. And so that saves me all of that travel charge and per diem and that kind of stuff. That's what it really saves me. But coming from Pittsburgh, basically that's the difference, is the per diem and the travel charge, the fuel charge.
I would assume that this system that you're proposing to us could be serviced by a Spader or a Scobell or something along those lines.
Absolutely.
That we wouldn't have to,
No, I think.
outside of the area to
Right.
find somebody's specialty for this. This is not, it's not a unicorn product.
Correct.
The mechanical side is we have good companies in here that do the mechanical side of things.
Right.
When you start getting into
Yeah.
these DDC controls, that's where we usually end up doing Pittsburgh.
Right. Like you said, the maintenance and DPC control system, like Dr. Walker saying, digital control systems, you have to be almost rocket science to figure this stuff out. So there are probably some systems, some of the local guys can hit a couple buttons and say this, your thing's battery's low. Oh, change the battery, thing works perfect. But the other thing says arrows code 7267.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have to call the specialist,
Right.
and then it could be done by phone, corrections.
Well, my tech is really good at, calling tech support.
Yeah.
Our maintenance man here is very good, and he can call tech support, and he's very good with schematics and reading through things and stuff like that. If he runs into something, then he can call tech support from whichever company it is, and they can walk him through it. And of course, we have local engineers here that, they can help us out, go to this guy, go to that guy. This is the guy that knows that, because in here, there's a guy that knows that somewhere, but we just gotta know that guy.
That might be a good learning curve for our kids to learn how to fix something. Video it when something goes wrong and then take it back to classroom.
Well, and a lot of the stuff is proprietary too, so you have to go to certain people to get it.
Yes.
And that's gonna be wrong. And I mean, it's just the way it is.
With anything.
No matter what we do, it's gonna be that issue. But I think that make sure that training is a part of the package. And whatever local equipment that he could use, that he didn't have to call somebody.
Right.
Just make sure that stuff is in there.
And it has gotten better on the control side. A lot of the pieces and parts now are becoming open, what they call open protocol. So you can do a certain level of things yourself without actually having a certified tech in. They also have very good remote in services to be able to take a look at your system and help you out rather than having a service call every time you have a small glitch or something. Now, some things they still have to come to the site for.
Well, it's taking care of the easy stuff.
Right.
Will save 3/4 of the issue.
Exactly.
And the quarter that you need, well, okay, you gotta bring somebody in, it's no big deal.
George, should we be thinking about, or is there embedded in this proposal, a small set of spare parts?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So as we roll forward 5 years or 8 years and technology changes, I think what we got right now is we've got a really old system. I remember we had a motor burnout at the fire department here at 3 a.m. and smoke through the building and so forth. And the motor was out of production, and then all of a sudden we're looking for an alternative that could be somehow cross-fit. How much of that kind of spare parts inventory would come with this system?
We usually,
Would you recommend that we get?
yeah, we usually start with the standard's usually 10%, or at least one of each item that you're buying. Now, we have gone in and tailored that for clients. Some clients want more, say, filters or fuses or something. We can look at that and kind of put together a tailored list, working with you and Dell to see exactly what you would like to see. Sometimes buying things like controllers for systems and things like that may make sense. It may not, because they update them so frequently. And usually within the first 10 years or so, they're compatible backwards. But you never know. But that's something that we can work on. That's a great point.
But is it already a part of what you're proposing here?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Is there any thought out there, I mean, you talked about redundancy, and I get that, especially with heat in this climate, but we're not in session very much in June, July, and August, where we have to have the whole building up. I mean, do we need that kind of redundancy if we're sizing something for the chillers so much bigger to work on the hottest day? Is that really necessary? Is there any thought out there with green technology to cut back a little bit on that, even on the boilers?
There is typically, we don't design to the coldest day anymore.
No.
For that reason, so we're not oversizing. George mentioned earlier about oversizing equipment to handle the heat, which obviously is enormous as opposed to our cooling load in this area.
Right, and that's exactly it, Chris. We try to take a look at, there are obviously hottest days on record for June or July, and that's most of the time what you size equipment for. We try to take a look at when you're going to be operating, and some of the spare capacity just inherently comes with sizing the unit and the units that are available. So, in this case, right now, we're looking at 240-ton chillers. We may have been looking at 230-ton, but might have not been as close as we wanted to the actual load. So we don't feel that it's oversized to the point where it's ridiculous or that you're paying for a lot extra. We do recommend that even if we went down to just the load you were looking at, still consider 2 chillers. Because if one does totally go down, all the compressors lost, you could be sitting for months at a time without any cooling. And even, into September or into May, June timeframe, when you do have students in, it can get fairly uncomfortable if you don't have something.
Are there any return plenum areas going to be open areas in this new design? Everything's going to be ducted.
Yeah, we typically like to duct everything, especially in a building like this where you have different things going on in the various spaces. Yeah. When you start to do return air plenums, then you start transferring smells from one program to another. We would prefer to duct it, and that's how we have it in the project currently.
Okay.
If you ran into an issue with cost at some point, it's something you could certainly look at adjusting, taking some of that return duct out and doing plenum in certain spaces, but we would not recommend that initially.
Well, yeah, it's a whole new set of problems, right?
Yes.
You can't run electric through it. You can't.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Yes. So you save some money here and you spend some extra money here. And
yeah, and it's probably too late once we make that call. So
right.
I think that needs to be determined.
Right.
So what's the plan here tonight? What do you need from us?
Just want to know if you want to proceed with the system that George is recommending. And that's big for us right now because first George can finish up designing his equipment, finishing up that with Dell. And he mentioned the ductwork. We have to work on the ductwork to get it all the way through to the new addition and everything else. So now would be a great time for us to make a decision on which system you prefer.
So we don't need to vote on that. We just need to give you the.
You give us a green light, so you want air handlers or if you want the rooftop units?
What's his recommendation is
Air handlers.
what's your recommendation?
Yeah.
I vote for that.
Is there anybody opposed to that would be my big question.
I think you got your answer.
There you go.
Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, if you need anything, additional information, let us know. We've left the drawing and specs for you. Next update will probably be in October.
I sure appreciate it, because this is something something to take back to our old board to show, because this is what we went over, this is what we're proposing, and then you got, we have to take that hand up to give your other board members, so they know that. I don't know, go with this design going forward.
Getting some good money there, right?
Yeah.
See?
Can you send us these soft copy?
You should have those digitally, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Do we have the drawing too?
No.
I don't think I saw that. With your notes on the
yellow.
yeah, the
yellow?
yellow.
I think you have it right there.
That. We have the analysis.
Okay.
I saw that. I did not see this.
Send it to you as a PDF.
Yeah, send that to everybody.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
George, one more question. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
If, I don't know, I hear things that somebody's gonna make some changes to air quality, air standards based on this COVID thing. And if that comes to be, how would we, you know, and maybe it's a UV thing, I don't know what it might be.
We are monitoring that to see where they're going with the recommendations. Right now, we've seen the air change increase, we've seen the filtration increase, we've seen some other recommendations. Nobody's come out and said, this is what you need to do, this is what you should do, this is what the code's going to say. And I think one of the big reasons, I know this is all to deal with COVID and safety and whatnot, but when you start doing that, then you start impacting your energy efficiency,
Yeah.
which those are the codes that we have to meet. So you start adding additional restrictions with filters, you start increasing air changes, now we have to upsize units. Now we can't meet energy codes.
Well, I guess that's the question is, if we put in these units and, I don't know, 2 years down the road, these new requirements come out and we need more horsepower, we need more whatever we're gonna need. Does that negate our new ones or?
No.
I mean, we'll be able to add on or whatever to these, you think?
You'll be able to add on some. What we've been finding, we've been doing a lot of analysis for school districts, you know, as far as air changes and things. And just inherently based on our design, we've been able to meet the increased air changes within the classrooms. Now it's fallen a little short in administrative areas and things like that, but we've been able to get the necessary air, what they're recommending now, necessary air with just increasing, you know, making adjustments and balancing and not changing units. So I don't anticipate that we're going to see any increases above what they've already done. But again, you're bringing in a ton of outside air and nobody's able to say, this is going to correct your issue. You're not going to have any cases.
Yeah.
So now the downside with, you know, the ultraviolet, you got to be real careful with that stuff. I mean, that's not something you want, you know, a general maintenance person working on. There are safety issues associated with it. So you got to be real careful how you apply it, where you apply it. Again, and they haven't shown any test results that say this eliminates COVID-19 that I have seen.
Well, I know it's a tough call, but if there's any way we could allow for future something or other in the specifications for these units.
Sure.
You know, maybe more room on the mezzanine or something.
Sure.
That allows us to expand
And
whatever might be coming down the road.
as we go through this process and we get updates, we pass it off to Dell and the committee so everybody's aware of what we're looking at, what we're considering, you know, how we're planning for that without spending any additional dollars until somebody tells us we have to or you tell us you want to.
George, I'm wondering about how it might work in the conversation that you're having with Mr. DePlasto right now. And one thing that I could see come down the path is a seemingly benign requirement to move to what we keep hearing in the news, MERV filters.
Mhm.
The issue is if you double the size of the filter, you're going to need that much more power to push that much more air through it.
Correct.
So going on John's idea of are we going to be able to expand that? That seems to be an initial first step, is to increase the filtration. That just as a logical first step if some of that change comes down the line.
Right.
With the equipment that you're recommending, have the physical capacity to switch from those thinner filters to the bigger filters? And would there be enough ability to push that much more air through it, or would we be looking for some other way to generate more air pressure?
No, in fact, we're already selecting the units for MERV 13, which is what the recommendation is.
I see.
Just to make sure that we have that extra horsepower, that extra static pressure that we need to be able to incorporate those filters.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
And they're on VFDs anyway, right?
Yes.
They're on VFDs.
Most ultraviolet lights will fit right in our, they don't take much space, they could fit right in the ductwork, right? You see that new machine that go from hospitals?
Mhm.
Who knows what they're gonna come up with?
Yeah, no, but ultraviolet lights are fairly compact, and they was low, but it was the ductwork.
I
Yeah.
just installed a whole bunch of
Huh?
them. It's a
The
three
keyword
inch
is
hole.
cheap, inexpensive.
No, ultraviolet is very expensive. You gotta replace the bulb every year, and they aren't cheap.
Inexpensive.
Okay, inexpensive. They are expensive.
All right, thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much for your
October, is that
time.
what you said?
Yeah.
So we'll already build you into the agenda. I'll probably do it just like we did here with a work session at the beginning, start you guys before the meeting break.
That'd be great.
And in November, we meet on Thanksgiving night.
All right, I like it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Well, let's hear it.
We need a 2-minute break, or we're ready to keep rolling?
I need a break, if that's okay.
Okay, 2 minutes. Or so.
My wife, I'm not Mark Blake. As long as I ain't moving or moving, I can eat it. I'm not saying that, like, I'm waiting. I can't. Now she's.
Del has it set up. Everybody wants to make a plan. How's that? Perfect. Don't bring your lunch and sit down.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm fine, I'm doing good. I just had a meeting at the VOTAC.
Okay.
What's that?
Thank you.
For yours, I just talked to them, I'm gonna get out of there. Bring up a can.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to write these down.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing.
That's the couple I noticed a couple things there.
What's that?
Thinking about our last PAC meeting and some concerns about.
Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not God, okay? Okay. I'll be and I'll see you later, okay?
Jeff just came to tell me that he's doing this meeting outside the street. So what do I do with that?
Well, you extend the invitation.
I know, but in the meeting, when I was getting my ears boxed about how they're involved in the process. I think well, I did say, hey, look, you're calling me.
Right, I could stop, like, Ron said, you can stop.
I
think
So I think you're gonna rely on me. Is that how it's working? I think that's what's gonna happen. I think we need on second. We should.
There's no, I said, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Until after the selection.
Well, I think part of the frustration.
I
is
said, we're not
that-
even talking. Touching me, it's not after the selection, still on that.
There, I went through the whole, yeah, I found my name, so I'm like, you never worked there. I think his name. I told you, February, they're closing. I'll be retiring.
Same thing to do with our.
These taxes I posted, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'll have the Supreme Court
I think that's fair,
justice
but
trying
I'm
to change
just
it.
trying to figure out how to
On
navigate
on
the
there,
water because
there's
there's
no
no
sad
two
things.
personalities.
I don't care, but I get left.
Thanks.
No.
I want to look that, you don't get that stuff.
I know.
I looked through it really, really fast, so scroll through that.
We came
So
back.
some kind of, yeah, it looks like, so you look through, you don't think these 67 pages in like a minute. You scroll through
Our
it.
shames.
If you're a one, if you're a
So that's one
one.
thing, like, and then he emailed me and said, we're trying to do it online property this year. So, well, let's try it, that's like,
That's what I meant.
I just have work, I don't have a laptop.
They don't want to
I have this stuff. So I don't do it.
You're not.
I just want to make sure
Sky
I'm not
work.
misinterpreting.
Some people have cameras.
There are priorities and then there are priorities.
I am not.
I just needed to move around a little.
And here's.
So,
and that's the thing.
I'd be at a
They
meeting,
have a board.
audio.
I'm gonna tell you something. If that's the case, I think we're gonna, they walk around and call me mom. Because that's what happens, they're born.
Yeah. I think some of the.
They can survive.
I just talked to my superintendent.
They're called kids now. There's no such thing as
I'm trying to figure out values a little bit.
He's on YouTube.
And I think there's.
I just watched YouTube.
I guess that's what I was verifying.
Because like my superintendent.
I didn't eat that.
I don't really.
A silent moment of reflection. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Maloney?
Here.
Mr. Dinsmore is absent. Mr. Bucksby?
Here.
Mr. Olsnanek?
Here.
Mrs. Brink? Here. Mr. Rickrod?
Here.
Mr. DePlacido?
Here.
Mr. Cancelo is absent. Mr. Ring?
Here.
Mr. Gilbert?
Here.
And Ms. Lee sent her regrets. She's going to be out of town and unable to attend this evening.
All righty, we have approval of the agenda and amendments. We've got two amendments adding their A and B. Is there any other ones that we need to add? Not, that takes us to meeting minutes. Motion A.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the minutes of August 27th, 2020 as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Student accomplishments and highlights.
Check, can you would you pull that up?
Yep, I'm doing a couple things here. Oh, sorry, guys. Let me get my brain in it. Where am I at?
The 2012 after
Number 4.
Flacco.
Thank you.
Joe couldn't be here this evening. For our student highlight, our plan was to take you into different labs, but due to COVID and Dell's excellent maintenance staff, the labs are clean right now, so we're not taking any field trips. But we did want to highlight our 4 nominees for the Patrick Locko Award. This used to be called the Gold Watch Award through the Manufacturers Association. And I just looked at the plaque that will go back up in the high school office. The Locko Award has been around from 1995, and I think they started that even earlier in '85. But these 4 students that you see here, they have been nominated for the LACO Award, and we would have invited them tonight, but they're pretty nervous because their interview for the LACO Award is tomorrow. So I'm sure they're home preparing for that. But the different labs that are normally represented, drafting and design, precision machining, sometimes is represented electrical engineering, facility maintenance, and metal fabrication. So this year, Jeff, if you can scroll down just a little bit, we have 2, I believe, from drafting and design, 1 from facility maintenance, and 1 from electrical engineering, and you can see their home schools there. So we're very proud of those students. We will also recognize them at our ECTS award ceremony. One of those students will receive the award after the interviews, and so Joe will announce next month who that is. The other student achievement that I want to throw out there is I think our students and staff have done a wonderful job of showing resiliency, patience, and adaptability to an AD schedule and remote learning. So it's been a great startup for us, and we're just glad to have them back at least part-time.
Thank you. This is like guest and public comment. If anybody wants to address the board. Nobody's flagging you down, Jeff.
I'm sorry, you're asking me. We do not have anybody in the Zoom meeting right now other than.
Very good. Then important items coming to ECTS.
I'd like to address that, and I'd like to have a brief conversation about a new program coming to ECTS. We will talk further in executive session about performance metrics, but we've been moving toward a new program here, hopefully one to start in the next possible window of opportunity for PDE approval. It's been a long-standing conversation, even relative to the renovation before I arrived, that there was going to be a new lab and classroom built and that it was somehow earmarked for a health-related program. We've met with the stakeholder group of health science and technology through Mary Beulah's group of the Erie Career Pathways. And Sandy did a wonderful job of really facilitating that conversation about, do we need another health-related program in Erie County? And we had the data with us from the high priority occupations and the data from the state. Health-related programs that we were looking at did not appear directly in the programs needed in Northwest PA, but they did show up on the state. So the consensus of that group was we should add another health-related program in Erie. The interesting thing is when you pull a stakeholder group together and ask them, do we need to train more people just like you? The answer is yes, yes, yes. So, and that was what we got out of that meeting. I've been talking with Janet Anderson, who will have to be an approving source for a new program at ECTS because she's the leading representative of the Workforce Development Board. And we were going to prepare to recommend to you tonight an EMT program. We have 2 paths we can follow for an EMT program. One would be under the umbrella of Homeland Security, which that would mean you would learn some of EMT, but you'd also learn some of police, some security, some of firefighter, some, several other things. There are a number of these programs in our region. There are pros and cons about going down that umbrella path, and tonight's not the night for that particular conversation, but the other alternative is a program just related to EMT, and that's it. You have to be 18 years old to take the EMT test in Pennsylvania. And so the challenge becomes, do you make a program so focused that you just get that one person out, the EMT, or do you make something more broad? When you go down the path of making it more broad, there's not enough time to spend on the medical side of it to have those students successful coming out of the EMT certification test when they hit 18. So now there's some churn. I asked Janet Anderson, why did the EMT not make it into the high priority occupations for Northwest Pennsylvania? And she said that when she asks representatives of the community and politicians about this very point, in all 6 of our counties in the Workforce Development Board region, they come back and say, we need more EMTs. But the concern is that because we have a volunteer firefighter structure in this area, there's very difficult to get the average of all the people employed in those areas up to the level of wage earning ability that allows the Workforce Development Board to support that for a career orientation. So she did go back and say, we might be able to sort of work the system. So if you go back and say, we want to prepare EMTs just to go into a volunteer workforce, that's not going to work. She said, if you want to go back and try the argument that you're going to use a program to prepare EMTs so that they can pursue other medical career fields in post-secondary education, then we might be able to have a conversation. And so she said, like, I just can't accommodate a conversation about that. You know, her schedule's booked up, so we'll have to get on her calendar for that. But that is a developing consideration. I talked about this with the PAC prior to the conversation with Janet Anderson, and they're fine with moving with the EMT. But they also said very clearly that if we're going to go down this path, the next program we want to see is something with drones. I'll invite any different perspectives or comments. We have our superintendent of record that's here with us. So we're going to go forward with our plan. We're on schedule to come up with an application that would go in either in May, June, but certainly before the end of this calendar year as part of my conversation of metrics for the director. But we're not ready to say it's going to be EMT, it's going to be Homeland Security, or it's going to be some other option. But here's something that I need your input on, and this is the forum where I get to ask for your sort of thoughts. If we were to go down the path of drones, it is such a new career field, you can't get a program of study, there's not a program of study for drone technology. So it would have to be under something like mechatronics, or it would have to be under electromechanical engineering technology, where the focus of all the project work is in the drone space, which is entirely reasonable to do. Here's where we're going to run into the challenge. I had this conversation with our curriculum director, Sandy Carr, who's here with us right now, just this afternoon. If we bring forward a STEM program, which is very hot topic in PDE right now, you're going to have a qualification of students coming into that are ready to do that program. You can't have somebody come in with 3rd grade reading and 4th grade math and be successful in a mechanical engineering technology program focused on drones. And so Sandy and I had a good conversation about that. You know, my question was, bringing my own background into this, just put a prerequisite on it. The kids come into high school, they're in the high schools for a year before they're even qualified to come here. Can we just say that you've got to have your math out of the way, or a high school algebra class out of the way as a qualification to come into a program? And I'm not sure the answer to that is yes.
Don't most, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I have two that I have a senior and one that's graduating as a 7th grader. Don't most kids take algebra in 9th grade?
So
No?
It's a mix.
they would like, everybody would like this.
Quite a few do, but.
Well, my daughter took it like 7th and 8th grade.
Well, they take it 7th and 8th grade too, but I think,
But
is 9th grade, they have to have it?
I don't think they have to.
Let's hear from our superintendent down there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, most, at least at Fort LaBeouf, most of our kids are exposed to algebra, some of them high levels of algebra before they leave our middle school.
Yeah.
So algebra is available for kids who have not gotten to that point at 9th grade. But typically, you're going to see them going into geometry
Right.
when they hit the high school, because they've already been exposed to that at the middle school level.
So by 9th grade, they've had algebra,
I would say,
or they're taking algebra 1.
correct.
Okay.
And
So,
if we're asking to raise the bar here, it would not be unreasonable to
It would not, no.
require.
I think what the program, the type of student that you're attempting to draw to this program will be one that would probably be inclined mathematically to get involved at the ground level. So I think you're probably going to see some upper level math kids qualifying for a program of this level. That would be my estimation.
are we looking to see like our robotics club kids in this, or
Lego club.
I don't think exclusively, I think.
But
that-
I mean, that's the type of mindset we're looking for.
I don't know if I could identify that mindset of a freshman going into high school. I think you might gather some of those kids, but I think you'll find some kids that are truly interested in a STEM career latching on to that type of program here at the tech school.
I guess I'm confused, what exactly is a drone program? I mean, when I think of drone, I think of, the little flying thing that.
That is an exploding industry, but it is such an immature industry that it has not caught up with labor division calculations and programs of study being developed for it yet. So these drone programs, you can buy them online if you don't want to develop the curriculum, but in essence, you teach the students how to fly a couple of configurations of these things,
Okay.
with the big carrot for the industry certification being that you're qualified to sit for the FAA drone pilot certification test. Now, what you're seeing is drones are employed by the police departments, by the fire departments, by the utilities departments, by the forestry service, by utilities, by all of these places.
Is it Amazon
And commercial deliveries with it.
I just did not, I was like, what are you doing?
But I'm not done yet.
Take pictures.
But I'm not done yet. Roughly half the program would be involved with flying these things and getting licensure to fly them, but the other half of it would be understanding the mechanics and how they work and how you repair
Oh, okay.
them. That
They
would
crash
be, well, they
a
do,
lot.
and they get shut down. But again, there's a direct path into industry, there's a direct path into the military. But this, my fear of this is that we're liable to get kids that might be gamers, that might not be academics interested, and they're gonna wanna fight to get into the program because it sounds attractive.
Right.
And then if we don't, this program would be a winner if we were to have it as an aspirational program, because there aren't aspirational programs here really right now.
Yeah.
But if we get kids in here that the example that I heard today earlier was, we've had kids in here with third grade, reading level and fourth grade math, vice versa, in programs that have published, you're supposed to be reading at 10th and 11th grade. So we don't have control of admissions decisions like what you might think.
That makes me sad.
Well, but it's reality, and if we're gonna bet the future of the school, because we haven't had new programs here in a long time, we're gonna need to have selected a program that we can make work, given our community rules, norms, and values.
Yeah.
Are the schools making those decisions on which students?
Well, the way that this works, and there's lots of people here that have more knowledge about this than I do, but each of the schools get to pick their 4 kids that come here. And we try to coordinate with them so that we get, our quote is the right kid in the right program for the right reason. But, you get parents involved, you get guidance counselors involved, and you get school districts making payments for these programs, and they want to make sure they get their fair share of the seats. Then all of a sudden, this doesn't come out so clean on the backside.
Well, you got government involved, nobody left behind, stuff like that, you can't discriminate.
Well,
That's a student, if he has a learning disability, disabled, you can't discriminate against anybody.
well, Sandy said today in our
You can.
conversation, I'm sorry if I'm calling you out, Sandy, I'm trying to be fair and objective. Sandy said, you have issues of equal access.
Right.
Well, that's why I'm asking this group, and we've got, we've got. some
We don't have
superintendent
control,
everywhere.
you better go talk to the governor and say, we can control stuff, we could make this school and college, but we don't have that control. I can't get the bad apples not to come here.
Oh, I'm not going down that path, but what I want to know is this feasible, or should we be looking for a different kind of a program?
I agree with any program, but you have to be suitable to do the people that aren't up your standards into every program. Because we're a public school, we're not a private school. That's the difference. You're a private school.
Yeah, but if a student comes in and says, I want to take algebra 2, and they haven't started with pre-algebra,
No, I'm not saying.
you don't have to let them take that.
Right.
I mean, so I guess that's the question.
I'm saying the child has a problem taking algebra. You have to guide and counsel that children to get through his algebra so that he can pass algebra test. So it's not like you can say, no, you can't take the algebra. If you say that to a student, you get yourself in
But
trouble.
we have programs at Harbor Freight, psychology just comes to mind. You have to have fulfilled 2 or 3 different
That's elective,
prerequisites.
that's elective.
Well, wouldn't coming to the tech school technically be an elective? Am I wrong about that? This is basically an elective.
You know, this has gotta go to, it's really gotta go to these two gentlemen at the end of the
We
table.
put them up that special table by themselves.
So that
Now
they
you're in the hot
easier
seat.
for us all to aim at. I mean, look at it.
So the shells are, from a legal standpoint, I don't see a problem with making a prerequisite to a course as algebra 1. I just don't see a problem with that, because that's a necessity in order to take the course.
I mean, we even have prerequisites where they have to have gotten either an A or a B in that class in order to get to the next class.
But
So-
that's for a standard student. A special needs student is a different ballgame. Well,
I'm not gonna address the grade level. I don't think we were talking about that. I think we were talking about the ability to have a prerequisite for a certain course in order to take that course. And I think that is legitimate. I don't think it violates any disability or special education laws. If that student is able to take Algebra 1 and finish Algebra 1 with whatever help that can be provided
right.
under the special education system, then that student can go ahead and take the VOTEC or the technical course here.
Let me ask a follow-on question. What if we were to head down this path and in various conversations, I've had support for this in all circles. What if it was an aspirational program and we could have 24 in the morning and 24 in the afternoon, but what if we only were able to get 12 or 15 kids in the program because of the requirements? Would the JOC or the superintendents, do you think, find that unacceptable?
Do we think that we would have?
I'm just thinking about all the options, because that's what my job is, I think, to be thinking about.
Well, don't you have many programs that kids, you have more that apply that are even accepted?
Yes, we do.
Wouldn't this probably fall into one of those programs? I would assume, this seems like a hot topic program from what you're saying.
It could, yeah. I believe that, or I wouldn't be having this conversation.
But on the flip side, you're concerned the numbers could be low, and I think it's fair to assume the numbers would be low at the beginning.
They might be low at the beginning, yeah.
Until kids have been through it, so I think it would be, right thing for the board to do, to say, well, your numbers the first couple of years can be lower. We're gonna look towards growth, we're gonna look towards a solid program that sells itself. Figure out how to make that
And you're
happen,
not
but it's reasonable not to start out with 48 kids in the program on day one. You can't do that because you gotta split it up anyway, so it's gonna be half that number.
A third.
Or a third or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you build a solid plan around it, I think this JOC will support a potentially lower number in the fact that it's a growing technology. If you don't have it figured out, you can't go copy someone's program exactly because it's all new stuff. And it's like, you're going down the right path of trying to bring in programs that do have growth potential and are the future as opposed to industries that are dying.
Now, how would you deal with, let's say you have an upcoming senior who wants to take it? They wouldn't be able to go through the course, so I'm saying for your first couple of years, you're probably gonna have a little bit lower because you're only gonna be able to take sophomores and juniors, maybe.
That's correct, and we would run into challenges in any program area we would select with what you just said, because in order to get students far enough through the curriculum where they can start to sit for professional certifications, we would need more time than they're gonna have available anyway.
Right, so do you even make it open to juniors and seniors the first year, or just to your sophomores?
We would just do it for the sophomores
Right.
for the first year,
First
but
So
these are
your numbers
mechanical.
are gonna be low anyway.
Yeah, well, these are mechanical questions that are sort of at level 2 and level 3. And I want to just say that I'm really proud we're having this conversation about bringing new things to the agenda.
Yeah.
What's new coming to ECTS, because that's what I had in mind when it took a long time to get that strategy embedded in the agenda. And we just had 6 new board members come online. This was never there. And I wanted a forum where we could have a conversation like this, and I don't recall us ever really having a conversation like this before. That's what I asked for. And so I really feel glad that we're having this.
I'll be honest with you, I literally just had a conversation with our superintendent today, and we were basically talking about this program, or not this program, but the idea that ECTS needs to get new programs. because there are many more developing fields than we have here.
Yeah, but I didn't come here to sit in a chair. I want to build and grow.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, it's a 2 to 3 year cycle.
It takes time.
And all the school districts have to agree to help pay for new programs.
Right.
And so there's a reason why in 50 years, there haven't been new programs.
Right.
So that's gonna take some work.
Well, one would think that there have to be programs that are a little obsolete. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I haven't sat on this board very long. I'm
taking
gonna just say
anything
that.
offline that is substantially enrolled is a very tough thing.
We took the most sophisticated thing off.
Oh, really?
Well, there's a lot of story.
Yes, but technically that, if you would took it back, if you look at that course, literally, that should have been the highest sophisticated course here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with that.
Okay, so, but I just want to go back to, you said a statement before, and I don't want to miss that. So I came on this board, and our school board, when Dr. Tracy was there, and the different superintendent was, different director was here, and I talked to the principal, I said, our school district is dropping our industrial arts. Okay, we don't have no industrial arts at our drawing. Okay, so I said, I'm under this, and I went here, and if you could start tech school and every grade, 10th through seniors, you knew you didn't get a certificate, but at least you got some experience on that product line. And if we have an opening here and a slot in your school district, you can have that slot. We're paying for it either way. And now we're paying per student, so we pay a little more. We dropped that so we could afford to come out here. So let's say the children get through their old high school and they have technically, they got all their credits. They have nothing to do their senior year. Technically, they could come out here, let's say they did general studies, they have everything they needed. They could come out here and try the carpentry for 1 year, at least they had some hand experience on that, because we took no liability. And I talked to the principal here, the director here, and our superintendent. That was the only reason I agreed to drop shop class. Okay, that was the only reason I said it. And we sold all our shop class and forged material, got rid of all that stuff. Right, so I wanted to tell you that this school this tech school, unless they lied to me, which he probably did, they won't accept you if you're a senior, but they do, because my niece came here as a senior. You're allowed, am I correct or am I wrong?
The preference would go to a sophomore.
But if there's an opening seat.
Exactly. So when we fill the seats with sophomores, because they would have the opportunity to take all 3 years of the program. We've taken juniors, we've taken seniors, if there's an open seat in the program. So, this year carpentry, their numbers are a little bit lower. If there would have been a senior that would have applied, they could have had that seat.
Yeah. They might apply for anything because they're just general stuff and they technically don't even have a 10 school their senior year.
I don't think it's marketed to the school districts that,
I did market,
understanding.
that's what I marketed because we dropped all our industrial arts.
And I think even talking about the drone program, this is down the road, but I could potentially see something like that being, open it up to if you could take 5 or 7 seniors for a 1 year program, and that being the first year, you'd all be taught the same thing. You couldn't fill it with that because then you'd have to get enough of your sophomores in to get your 3-year program. But there could be some potential for having some.
Well, the nice thing with that is, you did say one of the benefits of this would be something where they could go to the military, they could go into some other aviation thing. Kids who are senior years, my son, for instance, he's just all of a sudden decided he wants to be in the Air Force. And that would have been something good for him to be like, oh, okay, so go check this out, see how you like it. Maybe this might be something you can do when you get to the Air Force. So I'm just saying, it might be, he's right, it might be something that seniors might be able to take advantage of.
I think you're absolutely correct on your points, and you're absolutely correct that there may very well be some capacity, and in the best case scenario, there'd be no capacity because everybody would want it and everybody would go through that. But at the end of the day, that comes down to the merits of the strength of the program and the effectiveness of teaching.
Right.
Yeah.
So keeping those things separate, the question becomes philosophically, are we willing to have an aspirational program here that people have to sort of compete to get into?
I would
And
love
so,
that, yeah.
and I would submit our schools, that is gotta be, we need a signature program, we need a signature cluster of programs that people wanna compete to get into in order to raise the quality level of the overall student experience. And right now, we've got wonderful programs and wonderful teachers in industries that are mature, and we need to continue to fill those pipelines. The question is how you want to grow in the future. You want to add more trades-related things, or you want to try to embrace, some new concepts, health or STEM?
Yeah.
That's really the question. And the trade-offs on that are that we're not going to be able to bring on 6 new programs, probably because of the funding requirements. And if we go down this path, what's the feeling in the JOC in terms of wanting to support a program where you're going to have some higher expectations and some prerequisites to get into it? And the trade-off's going to be you're going to start off with some lower numbers, at least to begin with.
It sounds like around the table that you're saying, yeah.
Rick, would you offer any comments or perceptions or thoughts? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am.
Yeah, I think, like Fred said, I think there are still some programs here within the school that need to continue to fill a pipeline, and many pipelines that many of our kids are suited for. At the same time, I think an aspirational program, as Fred described, is something that I think our superintendent group would be very interested in. So long as we can go back to our boards with data that supports a future of that program. We've only had a 50,000-foot conversation of what that program would look like, which is kind of what we're doing right now. But I don't think I'd find anybody, at least on the team that I know of, that would object to entertaining or at least investigating a program that brings the type of future opportunities that Fred's describing here. I think all of us are looking for opportunities to get our kids here at this building, particularly when STEM continues to become a goal or an objective for us within each one of our schools. So,
Right, I think your hardest thing is when you find something to teach it.
I'm not worried about finding somebody to teach a more umbrella type of topic like mechanical engineering technology. I would have been in front of this group a lot stronger, a lot earlier. My initial thoughts in trying to work through the PDE as an organizational structure and bureaucracy is that we're talking about going into a career field that's so emerging that it doesn't fit their blocks of expectation. So if you went out right now to find an FAA licensed drone pilot with 5 years of recent experience, you're not going to find those people because they're going to be making $224,000 a year, flying for the police department, and they're not going to come here for 50.
Right.
And so that's my concern.
By the time you get out with this program out and get all the approvals, you're probably a couple of years away anyways. So by then there may be more resources, more programs down there.
What you're seeing is a lot of comprehensive high schools are bringing online drone programs. Where you run into the difficulties is that those programs can only go so far because they only have so much time, and they just don't have the ability to get the kids far enough down that curricular path where they qualify for the federal license. And so, yeah, I think you're right.
My only other question talking about the EMT program is there enough curriculum to fill 3 years worth of it? Because most EMTs go through, it's 160 hours, give or take. So that's less than a year worth of curriculum. What would they do for the other 2 years if you did the EMT type program?
Yeah, there's a lot of content that would go in. The Pennsylvania Department of Education has an approved program of study just for EMT. So we can call that up and show you exactly everything that they've got to go.
It's a 3-year program.
Well, all these are considered 2-year programs, but we have the option to give them a 3rd year, and we've elected to give them that 3rd year for more hands-on time.
Okay.
Is that something that that could be more general for like the first year And then the second year could be EMTs or another specialty of some sort.
Well, I've talked to this group about doing that specifically with one common year for physical therapist and the second year, you know, a general common first year, and then splitting going occupational therapist or physical therapist. And that's where we were going for quite some time until we had the meeting with Mary Beulah's group, and they were more interested in just approval of any health-related program.
Dr. Walker, earlier you mentioned in the EMT program about it possibly being, you know, police force, fire, you know,
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security breaking down different pathways. One thing that I always thought it would be kind of neat if we offered something that, you know, as you mentioned earlier, something that wowed and attracted people to here. And Homeland Security brought it to my attention again, is something in cybersecurity, something in that neighborhood. Because we have one of the leading higher education institutions in the United States in our backyard that pushes Homeland Security and cybersecurity and stuff like that. My nephew graduated from Mercyhurst. Before he even graduated, he was hired in Washington, D.C., you know, in cybersecurity. So I didn't know if any of those pathways, you could tie something like that into it.
We had that conversation prior to, I think, you're joining the board. I talked with the program chairs at Mercyhurst, and then, who was it? John Ogden connected me with a company representative that was dealing with cybersecurity for his organization. And when we all sat down and had the conversation about it, the concern was that to have a high school student prepared to go into the workforce in cybersecurity, they would be relegated to largely stripping carcasses, computing equipment down and putting it back together. And this organization that we were talking to was concerned that there'd be enough jobs at that level, but those are still going to be $15 an hour jobs. They're not going to get to that high priority occupation. Now, let me go back to one other thing that you said though. And Sandy Carr can speak to this, our networking program does have cybersecurity in it. And what you're going to find with almost any of these technologies and these conversations that we have is this mechatronics or this cybersecurity or this EMT, you know, this stuff is elements of that are in all these programs, you know. So now the question is packaging and marketing. So that's sort of what we have to deal with.
I mean, if we had something like that, then all of a sudden, are they better prepared to go to Mercyhurst or?
Well, there are certifications available for cybersecurity that our students can compete for. I can't speak to the list of exactly what they are, but we've got a good instructor that deals with that content.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
I wanted to just ask a question, not on these two, but the conversation that we just had. At my school, as well as the gentleman is right here. They don't have carpentry, they don't have woodworking or metal shop. We don't either. I think that might be a trend in some of the schools. I don't know.
Might be what?
A trend to eliminate those programs from the high school. But you guys have that. We have kids who graduate our school who don't know how to change a tire, who don't know how to saw a log, cut a piece of wood. We have kids that have never been exposed to any of this. Have we ever looked into having like a semester-long program where kids can, as an elective, come here and take like a little microcosm of life skills?
Not in my 2 years here, but that's.
I mean, is that something that's ever been thought of? Because when I went to McDowell, I took woodshop 4 years in a row. I mean, I wasn't really allowed to, but because I left and came back off and they let me. But I mean, I took metal shop and I loved it. And I was one of the only girls that took it, but I thought it was great. And if I hadn't had that opportunity, I wouldn't be doing a lot of the stuff I do right now, but.
I think the sky's the limit on what we can do. I think we have to balance out a bunch of factors all at one time.
Right.
Part of that is satisfying PDE for students that start programs versus students that finish them. We have to balance out the resources and kids that qualify for industrial certifications relative to the resources that school districts provide to have these kids have educational experiences here in the first place. So
Is there any kind of life skills class that we could just have as an elective to offer the school districts? Is that something curriculum has ever looked into?
That's something the superintendents could talk about.
Union City offers something very similar to what you're describing.
Yeah, but you guys have wood shop and you guys.
We pretty much did away with the wood shop that
Oh, did you?
went through and loved.
Yeah, but we don't even have the equipment anymore. We got rid of it, so we couldn't even offer that if we wanted to, because we have to
Same
rebuy all that equipment.
And because with the teacher is a highly skilled teacher.
Yeah, you'd have to have a teacher that would be able to have a little bit of general knowledge on everything. I mean, because that's really all that some of these kids really need. I mean,
Well,
they need to know how
I don't think
school
you want to
works.
go too general. I think just to, when Susan said a semester, that would be difficult. Because now you're gonna take your student for a half a day every day
Well, yeah,
out of there. You would have to be a year-long elective
okay.
for something. It sounds like what you guys are talking about is more of a general shop type class. We have a variety of programs in tech ed. It's
Right.
not there is some regular wood shop that I grew up in, but not so much. I mean, now they're dealing with lasers and
Yeah,
a whole bunch of varieties, but there's a whole avenue. I think if the superintendents, I think that discussion needs to start with the superintendents. Superintendents need to say, hey, we want to see you develop something. We have room here. Something like that could get developed,
Yeah.
but that would maybe even be outside of the normal scope of something. But
Yeah,
if a lot of school
I
districts
wasn't
are
thinking
doing
that'd be a
away with
half
the
day,
program,
that this would be something where they come for,
but nobody's gonna come out here for a period of day.
right,
They're gonna come for a half a day. That's what your transportation set up. That's the only way.
right, okay.
So you've got to make that then work for basically a year, because whose schedule is going to change
Yeah,
per semester for a half a day?
yeah,
You know, yeah, you get a couple periods here. I just think
yeah.
schedule-wise, that
I'm
would
thinking
be
seniors
great.
who, they've got, they've got to take 3 classes during the school year.
I think if the superintendent start looking at that, if that really is
Yeah,
we can perceive something. They know what the numbers are. Is
Yeah.
it something that's really doable? Yeah, maybe it is that. Maybe we look at that for some districts want to do it. Anything else under important items?
That's it for you. Thank you.
Good discussion, but we do want to.
thank you, Sam, I'm sorry.
All right. Yes, we do. Operations. Under operations, we've got some new business. We've got a couple different things. We also have a discussion. So the question is, do we want to have a discussion under B, old business? Before we have the motion for everything else we can make motions on? I would suggest let's just go there. Let's go to roundabout property discussion. Who wants to start that?
I would defer to, well, I'll begin. We received an offer, which I communicated to all groups simultaneously. I believe that it's an honest, straightforward offer. Tim has reviewed it, our attorney has reviewed it, and I think the question now is going to be, are those terms acceptable as they are? Do we want to counter? And then the other question is, do we want to engage in having someone else come up with their own estimate of the value of that as the basis of the counter, because we would have to pay for that ourselves. And then there's the mechanics of the transaction, and I think Tim has some ideas on getting that transaction completed via an agreed upon sale through 11 school districts as opposed to them just condemning the property. Is that a fair start?
It's a good start. The only, I guess I have to address the procedural issue first, because I think that has a bearing on how you want to proceed. What we've been offered is an agreement of sale from PennDOT in lieu of condemnation. And the agreement of sale is all the 11 districts are the named parties on the deed. So for approval of this agreement of sale, the JOC obviously would have to agree to the sale price. And then ultimately it would have to go back to each school board for approval in order to have that school board execute the deed. The problem with this process, however, is the section of the school code dealing with sale of real property by school districts, which requires all unused and unnecessary property to be court approved. There is to be court approved.
Okay.
There is no exception for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There are exceptions in that section of the code, but the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does not fit within that exception. So if we're going to go down the agreement of sale path, then that means that I have to file a petition with the court. In order to file a petition with the court, that requires 2 independent appraisals, not the appraisal from PennDOT. 2 independent appraisals, which would cost approximately somewhere between $2,500 to $5,000 per appraisal. Plus filing the petition, putting the notice in the paper in regard to the sale, going to the court for the hearing, providing testimony by the 2 appraisers at the hearing, and going down that path. So your $43,000 just went from $43,000 to $25,000.
So why can't we counter with them picking up all the costs?
So the cut to the chase, Jim. The other way to do this is to go back to PennDOT and indicate, listen, if we do this, we have to do all this. The alternative is go ahead and condemn.
At that price.
At that price. You condemn, you file a petition, you file the condemnation, you incur the costs. You condemn the property and we agree to the price. And you don't spend all that money. The other alternative is, as Dr. Walker has indicated, however, are you satisfied with the price? Or do you want to counter? I think you should at least engage in the conversation. Why not? What do you have to lose?
But you're saying short of the additional appraisals?
Short of the additional appraisals, we just go back. Now, whether they need justification for the paying us more, maybe we can come up with justification. We do have old appraisals back in 2006, where the per acre price was higher than they're offering us today. That was it was higher.
It was. Okay.
It was 12,000. We had 2 appraisals back then. It was $12,000 and $13,000 per acre. They gave us a range of 9,000 to 13, and then they took the average.
Am I wrong, the property appreciates in value through the years?
It can fluctuate.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
Out here, it actually appreciated because I know somebody bought a lot across the street here. Pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I did pull every vacant property sale from January of 2019 to the present. And I did not find any particular property that would be beneficial to an argument of a different price. They gave us 4 properties. They went from 2016 to 2018. That's why I went from 2019 to the present to see if maybe something was different or why they were choosing the old ones. I think they were just choosing those that they could find, and that's the issue.
I'd like to ask consideration of the JOC on one point. Whether you like their price or not, or whether we try to engage in another round of negotiation or not, I would like to re-advance the idea that they put some sort of a physical barrier between the roundabout and the front of the building here in case a car slides off. I mean, they're going to be within 150 feet of our parking lot. Yeah. And I had requested that with Tim, and their response was request denied.
Wow.
So I would go back, and when we talked with the negotiator said, that might be something you can bring up after we have an offer on the table as a way of, maybe you help us, we'll help you kind of thing. So I would ask you to very strongly endorse the idea I don't know what it is. You know, when you look at some of these roundabouts, like the one in Sagertown, you know, they've got a little, you know, precast cinder block wall as a circle and a raised flower bed in the middle. I'm just talking about something 2 or 3 feet so that if a car comes screeching over this way, it's gonna impact something before it impacts our parking lot.
In Sagertown, 3 months after they had it, the only one right through it.
Well, I'd rather have that than nothing. It did slow them down.
Well, yeah.
Dennis mentioned, you know, put some oak trees in there. Well, that's gonna take a long time
That's
to
gonna take
grow.
a long time to grow.
So, you know, if we're gonna go down the path of, yeah, you're gonna condemn and we're not gonna fight, and your price is acceptable, or we want another $10,000, I think that the conversation should also be, we want some sort of a barrier put in there.
I'll throw in the picture of Holly.
I don't think that's unreasonable, I don't know that, what do you do if they don't, but don't they have to have public comment then afterwards, before they actually build it, they gotta put it out for the township and for the.
Well, I think they went through that hearing process already.
That's already done?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're, you know, they're in final design at the present time, or design is done.
So I like the idea of just going back to them and saying, you take care of everything and give us what you offered us.
I think that's,
Plus
That's
the
the
area.
cheapest way out of it.
Come up with, ask them if they would consider some kind of a barrier, I think you can ask that.
I don't know that we wanna say, would you please? I'd be like, okay, we'll do this.
This is a condition.
This is a condition. It's not like, oh, please, sir, I think it's,
It rounded to 50,000.
Well, I was expecting to see 55 or 60,000.
I was,
I
sir.
really was.
I was shocked at that.
2 acres?
What did you say that the?
It's an awfully prime selection of 2 acres.
Yeah, what did you say the price was on the original estimates per acre?
Look how busy that intersection is.
Well, this is
Yeah,
17.
but I would do want property right there.
It's only a little over 2 acres.
43,065, divide that by
Can't get in, can't
2.45
get out.
acres.
No, they,
It's worth a lot of money.
the per acre cost is 9,500. That,
It's all spent
the
on.
value of the property is 23,228. The additional 20,000 is for construction related issues and damage to your property. They divided it into 2 sections in regard to the offer.
So the 43,000 or whatever it is for everything.
That's correct.
because they have picked up our property afterwards.
The value of the property is only $9,500 per acre, 23,228.
Where's that in the offer? So, I mean, I'm looking at the offer document.
I'm on, I don't know if you got the whole thing, I'm on page 4, land sale
We didn't get
analysis.
the whole offer. We got 1 page summary.
Okay, well, it's broken down, there's a land-based analysis, there's damage for temporary easements, and there's damage for direct damages rounded off. So the direct damage is 19,500, and that's, that 19,500 is to, you know, seed the lawn area, repair the asphalt driveway, depreciation in regard to the driveway, those things. So that's how they come up with the $19,500 in direct damages. Land value only 23,000, total $43,000 offer, 22,500.
So when we go to them and we say, we will accept the condemnation, but we want this, the barrier. I think we should have an idea of what kind of barrier we
Yeah,
want,
right.
so that they can't just be like, oh, we're gonna throw a few pylons up.
Would
You know, you don't want something ugly, and you don't want something that can get, you know, a cinder block wall that can literally get the first semi to fix it's gone. So what kind of,
earthen one, would you would like an earthen, like a little valve?
No, we mold.
Huh?
A mold.
What?
I'm sorry?
A mold.
He wants
He wants
he wants something below grade where we already have an issue with water storage on the other side of the thing.
Well, we're basically, it would be like.
It would be a moat.
A water retaining pond, you put your water retaining pond out there, you got, water stops you pretty fast.
It does.
All right.
Which, you know,
With the motion without the remarks.
Well, we never got that far in a conversation of what the options may be. I just asked for anything and they said no.
Well, I would say it's a condition of it, but if it was up to me, I'd be like, okay, you're not giving us really what the property's worth, first off. Although they realize that it would cost us a small fortune to fight them on it, which, because they're not stupid.
We can ask, but all they have to do is say deny it again.
Yeah.
And then what's your condition? If they condemn it, they're taking it no matter what.
Right.
If they condemn, what will we get if they condemn it?
Same amount.
Same.
So I think the goal for tonight is to seek authorization from the JOC that Dr. Walker and myself have permission to go back to PennDOT to negotiate at a minimum of $43,500, but seek as much as we can, and also seek a condition for the physical barrier. Does that sound like a direction that?
Yeah.
Do you want a motion for that or just?
Sure.
So moved.
Second.
There you go.
Did that include condemnation, what you just said?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
okay.
we don't want to go down that other route.
Yeah, right, okay. I just.
And if we have to go, if they don't want to condemn it, and we have to go back to the if we go the agreement of sale route, then they pay
All
everything.
costs.
They pay all costs.
Yeah.
Both appraisals, the petition, the court costs, everything. They won't want to do it, it's cheaper for them to file a condemnation.
Well, one would think it's cheaper for them to build us a wall.
Amen.
It's really expensive to build a wall.
Get that, Terry?
Tim, did
Second.
did I notice correctly in one of the documents that I just saw, the gentleman that we met with, I'm gonna butcher his name, but inadvertently, Gagliotti or something close to that, he's an attorney?
No, he's an appraiser.
I thought it said next to his name, Esquire.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. You did get that, Terry?
So when they get done.
This is on the roundabout to authorize Tim and Fred to negotiate to get a minimum of that and all the other things that are.
Minimum of the offer plus any more that we can get, plus some form of retaining wall or retaining structure. Barrier.
But we don't want pylons or something ugly. I mean, are we gonna talk about what kind of?
They're gonna take the
That's,
cement
they're
block.
gonna figure that out.
We'll figure that out. You're giving us direction to do that.
Yeah, they're gonna take the cement block.
Bylaws better than nothing.
Well,
Beggars can't be choosers. This is all being YouTube anyways. They can watch and see what we say.
okay, that's true.
All right, any more discussion on this item?
We're be slow.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would anybody like to make a motion for everything else there under operations section? Agenda? Jen?
Second.
Terry, second. Okay, discussion.
They said hang on.
This is on donated, unused instructional materials to Crawford County.
What's the priority action plan? What's that?
Priority action plan is a document that we prepare each year that shares with the JOC the major pieces that we're gonna work on. I believe it is embedded in PDE requirements and expectations. We prepared that to be largely an extension of the work that we had provided to this group from the year before on the 3-year curriculum project. And we took into account that we had a disruption for a year relative to COVID. And we provided a copy of it for you. There's nothing controversial in here.
There's a 5-year student internship agreement with Scott Enterprises, or Scott's Corporate Services Incorporated. And then also to the approval of the Occupational Advisory Committee members for 2021. Any other discussion, questions?
I wonder if they were the syllabi on there instead of syllabuses.
They know what they're doing. Right now. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Financial items.
Motion approved.
Second.
Did you get that? Motion second. Say your name too, it helps with this.
Frank. Thank you.
Any discussion? Anything to point out there, Terry?
No, we're just starting to ramp up once again. So the financials, if you have a couple moments and at your leisure, can just take a look at them. They're pretty close to how we've always started the year in terms of spending, obviously increases in late August into September as everybody comes back into the building. So you're going to see that on the reports the next couple of months.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Administrative Services and Human Resources.
I think I'd like to introduce here Kat Doty as our new person with that job title, just in case people haven't had a chance to meet her before. Kat's with us here. Kat's volunteered to do a skit tonight for us. She seems to be very resistant to that idea, but
She does have a really pretty rhinestone.
Okay. Motion. Yeah, we do it all together. It's all done.
We'll discuss it if you want a motion.
Motion to approve the administrative and resources section.
Second.
Terry second, all those, okay. Look those over, anybody have any questions on those, ratifying some things from the past? No questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Do you want to give us any more introduction? Okay. All right, then reports, superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Ring. I think Dr. Walker did a really nice job capturing most of the content of our most recent PAC meeting. The next time we meet is on October 2nd. I will pass on the information about some programmatic ideas and things that Mrs. Ring brought up tonight. And then, of course, report out to you guys next time we see each other.
Thank you.
ready?
Sure.
I've prepared a report. I'm not going to go through that report item for item. I know that's typically, at least in my opinion, a lot of why we're here for this conversation. But we agreed to move to written reports. We're going to have a conversation about some of the anticipated goals for the school a little bit later this evening. But I would just submit to this group that there are a couple of major things that are on the table that the JOC might not have fully appreciated the amount of work that is going to go into that. Let me remind us all of a couple of things. We have once every 5 years something called a 339 audit, and we're in that right now. That's a major work effort. In a good year, that makes us go through and pull out information on a per program basis. We've got 17 programs. So the other thing that goes along with that, which is a big stretch this year, is that it's all being converted to online. So that means now that you got to have the binders, but you got to also now present it all and scan it all and organize it all. And we're in the process of implementing some software to try to help with that. But somebody's still going to be there feeding all that stuff into a copy machine. I don't think that our group really appreciated that. The other thing that we've got to remember is that we're still in collective bargaining. And we are going to start that process all over again with a new group of people. And Kat and I are going to be having that conversation, and the leadership of the collective bargaining unit changed. So while we've already talked about sort of what we wanted to accomplish with the last collective bargaining group, that may or may not hold with this new group. So we got to restart that whole process again. And so, you know, that was for us getting to be weekly meetings. And so we've got to start it in earnest, and the collective bargaining group said, well, let's start that process in January. And my concern was we started in January and we're already shot by the time we get done, because between January and May, they have another round of elections. So this is going to require a big chunk of time in a compressed period of time to come forward. We also have this thing called a phase 3 comprehensive plan that needs to be put together this year. And so that looks at very similar to the 339 audit. It looks at programming and all of that. So now we have one more thing that has cropped up, which was that we were in the process of Perkins. And so they deferred all the Perkins auditing last year because of COVID. But we got to do it this year for last year, plus this year for this year. So, you know, we can talk about all kinds of, let's make a new program and let's advance the renovation and so forth, but there's an awful lot going on here, not the least of which is business continuity in a pandemic. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I take that as a friendly, don't whine. Or not friendly, either way.
You said it's a friendly?
That's good.
Any
That's my
questions
report.
for Fred?
Yeah, the only question I have is around, bringing the students back full time. Where are things leaning right now? I know the decision.
We've got,
Current plan is to the end of the quarter. That's not too far away.
that's correct. At this point, we've only had one incident involving any of our known community, one known incident with any of our known community members and COVID. And we are very much waiting to see what our school districts are going to do. But at this point, we've got about 2 more weeks max to make a decision on coming back full-time or not. And that conversation has not been brought forward yet. And we have our PAC meeting where this really would be the normal conversation coming right up the first week in October. So we could go back full-time, we're ready, everybody's here, everybody's provisioned and outfitted, and we could do that switch. It's going the other way that's a problem.
I was just saying, what if you get 5, 6 cases?
Oh, that's already predefined in the CDC protocols. If you get more than 1 case, then you start closing down operations for the 3 days or 5 days or more.
Right, but I'm saying, then do you switch gears and say, okay, we're gonna go back to ABAB/ABA?
Well, that's the cloudy area. It's cloudy, and in order to reduce some of the complexity and uncertainty, Joe and I made the decision with input from the JOC that said we're not going to be doing this on a weekly basis. It's going to be based on quarters.
Right.
Well, like you said, what, like the almost standard next quarter suddenly closed, do we go, like you said,
That's
go
what I'm
back?
saying.
Go, if it's a small change, we clean, should we go back to our, have like emergency, so you say, okay, we had too many cases, we're gonna go back to the, like we're going now. Okay, there's enough cases, like that's what we did our school district, if we had to make a decision, we get cases, you're gonna go, this is the first step we're gonna do, we're actually stopping, half our students are only be online, the rest will be coming in. But if it goes, like say, we go red, everybody's holding it.
But that is in the continuity of education plan that we provided and developed, and the JSC approved, and we filed with PWE. So that plan's already set. And the primary point to talk about right this minute is that if we have to switch back to a hybrid schedule at any point during any quarter, we're staying hybrid for the remainder of that quarter.
Right, so that's it. So it's pretty
That's
well,
understandable.
so it's pretty well set up. So
Very well set up.
Like we talked previous before the meeting, you're gonna tell us, next meeting that, oh, we decided to go to this, back to the regular schedule.
Yeah, so this is a normal time schedule that we would have this conversation with the PAC at our next meeting, which is next week or something like that. And we'll get the general consensus of how people are at that point. We don't, at least I don't, have a conversation with all of the superintendents on a regular basis to know how many cases they've got in their school districts. And I don't know that they're really, maybe they're talking about it amongst themselves, but I'm not aware of that. We've only had the one issue. And if we only had one issue on our radar screen, then that's not enough to say that you can't go back to full-time.
Okay, great.
I'm pretty sure the news is, telling most people how many school districts everybody has.
Yep.
Everybody knows Milford's got a case.
Yeah, so what I would imagine is if there's a disruption in the operations, I would contact Sam, and Sam would contact everybody else in terms of either letting you know and or asking for any decisions that need to be made.
And hopefully that would happen before the news, but who knows?
Yeah.
It won't ever happen before the
It won't
news.
happen before the news.
Yeah.
Well, so the only area that we're gonna have gray on that I might potentially get crossed with a superintendent or two or several, or the JOC, is that the nature of this school being a hub for all 11 school districts is if there's an alarming signal to me that we have a cross contamination that goes countywide, I've got to be the one to be willing to say, we're shutting this school down for 10 days.
Yeah, good with that.
And believe me, I don't, there's so many politics involved with that, I don't want to do that, but I'm not going to have it on my conscience or in the press that Fred Walker didn't make a decision, and now we got COVID all across the county.
Now, if you do have to close the school for 10 days, how does that impact the kids? Would they go online for those 10 days?
They would automatically all switch to online.
All switched automatically? Okay.
They're already 50-50, so.
They're already all 50-50, but remember, they were all provisioned for this through their school districts. When they were all online last year anyway.
Okay.
Not perfect, but it'll work.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have a principal's report?
Joe is out of the office for the next 3 days.
All right. So you're good there.
Just a quick solicitor's report, in case you wanted to skip that.
What? Oh, shoot. I already crossed you off.
Sorry. It's not really relevant to this organization, but the name of the foundation has been changed to the Erie County Technical School Foundation. That confirmed by the Department of State.
Only get you trained in unsafe tech anymore. We'll be.
I know, I'm sorry.
ECTS.
Tough to break.
I was shocked to see when I was looking at programs offered by other schools today, that there are a number of CTCs that are located on VOTEC Drive, you know, in their own communities. It's called VOTEC. You can mandate the law change to change the name of the school, but once the city names the street, I'm not sure how that goes.
We don't have that problem.
That's all I have.
Maybe it'll be the VOTEC circle out here.
Yeah.
Why do you have to do stuff?
Sam, you just said that on YouTube.
Yeah. All right, number 11. Statute related business. We've got a couple things there. I'm assuming they require a motion because it's here on my paper.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Who second?
I did.
Jim? Thank you. Any discussion?
The field trips,
Question.
are those actually happening?
Well, it's an outdoor walking tour of Erie, PA, so.
Yeah, but it says ratification of field trip request. Are there more?
That's a general structured budget or agenda.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
We would, if there were items under it, it would be in there, it'd be underneath that.
Thank you. I'm
So right
sorry.
now, it's just that one outdoor walking tour.
Okay,
If it wasn't for COVID, they'd be in Vegas.
I'm sorry?
If it wasn't for COVID right now, they'd be in Vegas.
In Vegas?
It was before.
I'd like to be in Vegas, but.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We've got supplementary reports and information. Anybody need anything else drawn out there? Board action items? We good? Any JOC board remarks and comments, or will we use them up already?
Well, how bad's our foundation going? Money, how bad was hit by the big market change?
Oh, actually, this past month, for the August statement from the Community Foundation, it's pretty well leveled itself back out. It took a pretty good dive for a couple of months, but it seems to have at least now seen unrealized gains and losses.
It just tanked the last 2 weeks.
Well, quit looking at
I'm gonna have to retire pretty quick, so
It's leveling out at zero.
It's a low one, yeah, zero.
That's what I'm afraid.
it. All right, just before adjournment.
Thank you.
We are gonna have a short executive session for personnel. Following adjournment, we'll be in action. We'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. That's okay with everybody? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Next meeting's October 22nd.
Yeah, no meeting November the 2nd.
I think that was the message that I sent to Lisa a long time ago.
Board.
Next one
after that.
Just so that we don't have cases and potential mess up.
Hold on. So we'll move over to board.